Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfoud, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.
This is an encore presentation of Faith and Sports. Tune in to hear Faith and Sport live Monday afternoons from 2 to 3 right here on Carolina Catholic Radio Charlotte, AM 1270. Well, a good Monday afternoon to you, and welcome to Faith and Sport on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network, AM 1270, Catholic Radio Charlotte. We're also streaming live online at carolinacatholicradio.org and on the Carolina Catholic Radio app. We hope you're ready for an hour of exciting sports news and fun and faith. It's Faith and Sport, and now let's go to your host for Faith and Sport, Dr. John Acquaviva.
Hi, folks. Welcome to the show, however, wherever you're listening. Chris, it sounds like you've been imitating our boy Ed Orgeron a little too much over the weekend, and therefore the voice is starting to go, huh?
Yeah, I think I did a little too many Ed Orgeron impersonations.
Folks, here's what we're going to do today. We got our hit and miss with Carlos Herrera. He's calling in here in a minute. We're going to do our weekend headlines. Later on in the show, after the break, we got Frank Allocco, the director of XL basketball camps, former University of Notre Dame football player and basketball player. Now he runs these great camps, and he's going to join us. Good, faithful guy. He's doing a lot of good work through his basketball camps. We got the quick Q&A with Dr. A toward the end of the show, and at the end of the show, we have our stat of the week. Sometimes we do Cathlete of the week. Sometimes we do the Pope quote of the week, but today we're going to do the stat of the week as it regards to sport. And, of course, it just means something crazy is going on in the world of sport. And I'll give you guys a hint. It has to do with a crazy contract for a player that didn't do all that well last year. Folks, I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. I teach exercise science at Wingate University in Wingate, North Carolina. At Wingate University, and after I take off from there on Monday mornings, I head over here to the studio, and Chris and I, and sometimes with Ed Billick, we all have a good time making fun of people who have great voices. We talk about some of the stuff in the world of sport. We talk about stuff that is related to the world of sport, which means character, ethics, integrity, morality, and so forth. And that's one of the things we try to do is look at sport through the lens of our Christian Catholic faith. Listen, folks, if you're listening AM 1270, make sure that you pass along to people that may not be in that, may not have the ability to get that in their car. And that means they have to do one of two things. They have to download the app, Carolina Catholic Radio Network app, or go to the website, carolinacatholicradio.org. In both cases, just hit listen live. And next thing you know, you listen to Ed Orgeron, the voice of Ed Orgeron. We listen to the voice, raspy voice of Chris, my raspy voice. And every once in a while, Ed Billick joins us in the studio, our friend from the WBT airwaves.
That's right. It's always fun with Ed.
Oh, man. That was great last week. And I bet he's listening in today, but he's also watching the clock going, when is this show going to be over? So shortly thereafter, the college football final is going to be on. That's tonight. We'll talk about that a little more. That's one of the reasons we're talking about LSU head coach Ed Orgeron. So Carlos is on the line, correct?
Yes, and he thinks I need to cut down on the Ed Orgeron impersonations, too.
All right, folks.
Got that deep voice.
I know. I love that guy's voice. Carlos, listen, Carlos Herrera is a certified soccer coach up in the Northern Virginia area, and as you know, he joins us just about every week to do a hit and miss. Carlos Herrera, welcome back to the show.
Great to be on, Dr. Acquaviva.
This is
as
great.
Always, and Chris.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, buddy. Listen, as always, you get to go first. Was yours a hit or a miss?
This is definitely a miss, and this is, if you've heard me before, this is an area that infuriates me to no end. And I was, just scanning Facebook like all of us usually do on a weekend. I happened to see a post of someone that I wasn't particularly very close to, but we're Facebook friends, and the post really caught my eye. And it literally started off by saying that her and her husband went to one of their kids' hockey games over the weekend, and the husband hadn't been to a lot of games, but first he commented, he was up against the glass, and he commented how he was really surprised at the negativity and aggressiveness of the parents in the stands.
Yeah.
And she commented this happens quite a bit. And so she posted that on Facebook, and I happened to be scrolling through them, and there was people that said, "Oh, that happens at my basketball camp, kids games, happens at our kids' soccer teams. We've left coaches that were like that." Somebody said their dance moms, their kid is in dance, and they've had to experience that. And I'm just thinking to myself, and these kids that were in the hockey were 7 to 8 year olds with that kind of aggressiveness, foul language, hurt him, get him back, those kind of comments like, take him out like he did you. It's just, to me, it's appalling and shocking that parents don't think that that's inappropriate.
Yeah, no, this is a widespread thing. This is one of the reasons that propelled me to start this show. It's not the only reason, but parental behavior, athletic, the athletes' behaviors, the administrators' behavior, and so forth. Yeah, there needs to be more discussion on this, and I think as much as anything, there needs to be more action taken on this, and people are doing a couple things, Carlos, to kind of help this new. I wouldn't say it's new, but it seems to have reached a new bad level of aggressiveness from the parents, even from some of the referees, people in the stands, and then of course this carries on to the athletes themselves, even when they're young. And there's a couple things that people have done to try to rectify this. The first thing I think of is a couple years ago, there was Little League baseball teams that required at least one of the parents to referee or to umpire at least one of the kids' games. And of course, what that does is it gives them a different perspective. It allows them to see firsthand and through a crystal clear lens that they're not going to make all the right decisions. And the irony is, the people that do that are forced to do that. They're literally asked to do that, or something like, they're fined or their kid can't play in the game. I forgot exactly what the ground rules were for that, but they felt, the parents, their complaints were, but I'm not qualified to do this. That guy is. And of course, who they're pointing to is like a 14-year-old kid, right? In other words, they're pointing to a 14-year-old kid who's just trying to earn a couple extra bucks during his week, and he's umpiring the game of 8 and 9-year-olds. And it just helps put it in perspective. And the other thing that's done, I've mentioned this a couple times, and one time I think to you, there's a Little League soccer referee in Oklahoma, and he got so tired of the parents, especially, creating these inappropriate moments and embarrassing moments for themselves, that he asked people to send in videotape of these people misbehaving to basically shame them into better behavior. But tell the truth, brother, I don't know if there's any one reason. I think that this stuff like this helps. What's your thought on that? Like, what can the teams, the coaches, is there anything in particular when you read that post site on social media that would help kind of decrease this aggressive behavior by the parents?
Well, I certainly think, and I thought a lot about this, in the youth soccer in Virginia and throughout a lot of the nation, they're starting to do, and it's directed at parents, right? They're starting to do, like, if you want to be a coach, whether you're a paid coach or a volunteer coach, you have to go through this good sportsmanship training, right? And it's every 2 years, and if you don't take it, you can't be a coach. So I think that goes a long way. But parents, they have to do this, at registration. Parents need to take class, right? And I also think it has to be, the referee needs to be able to say stuff, right? And you and we're, I think, a little different than a lot of people. I think you and we get very indignant when people are not treating other people right, that we will say something. And it takes a lot of courage, and you have to open yourself up for criticism from a lot of people. But, like, I'm just one of those people that if I were a ref, I would say I would stop the game, when the ball goes out or whatever, and I'd call the two coaches over and I'd say something, or I'd say something to the parents before the game. Like, I think, and that's unfortunate because it's hard enough to ref, and if you're a youth ref, right? Like, it's but it should not. I mean, this stuff gets me going, John. I mean, you and I could talk about this the whole session, but it angers me that parents are left unchecked. Yeah. And it should come at a cost. You should be able to eject a parent, whether it's consistent, negative comments or inciting your kid to hurt another kid on the other team because he got hurt. And, I think refs have to do it. I think at the league, they should require parents to go through a similar kind of training if you want your kid to belong. But ultimately, there has to be some sort of penalty because otherwise it'll just continue.
Yeah, Carlos, we're joined by Carlos Herrera. Folks, you're listening to Faith in Sport. I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. Carlos is a certified coach up in the Northern Virginia area, and he joins us just about every week to talk about our hit and miss. Carlos, do you know of any organization that requires the parents to go through this sportsmanship training like you guys had to go through as coaches?
I do not.
Yeah.
I do not. And I was actually just even looking online here. I mean, there's stuff for how to teach your kid good sportsmanship.
Yep.
Right, which I think it's funny because obviously you would think that would stem from the parents, right? Like, you need to be taught that, but I guess people need to be taught that, how to teach your kid to be a good parent. But to me, the parents are the ones that need that. Kids start with a blank slate, and they just imitate what they see.
Absolutely. So, yeah, and
which is also... I am not a fan of, people talk about going to the Philadelphia Eagles Stadium if you're an opposing team and that they throw batteries at you. The same in Mexico. You go to play in the Mexican soccer national stadium and the Mexicans throw, batteries at you. Like who controls that, right? Like I think you should self-police each other, right? Well, that's one, but nobody does. Nobody wants to. So, I mean, like I said, I'm the kind of person that if I'm at a stadium and there's a guy behind me that all he does is yell at the ref and swear, I'll say something, because it's just, they're just unabated. Nobody says anything, and they think it's normal. It's not normal.
Yeah, and people probably get really intimidated in those situations, too.
Yeah. I get nervous.
Yeah, and rightfully so. Well, here's what I'm thinking, and a sport that's, long and dear to both of us. And I was involved in it for a few more years than you are. And after I stopped playing rugby, I became a referee. And one of the things about refereeing for rugby that's different from any other sport is that if there's any type of inappropriate behavior, not just by the athlete themselves, the player, or the coach, but anybody in the stands, the referee has the sole right to remove that person from the stands. Otherwise, the game doesn't continue. And if the person refuses to leave, then the referee
doesn't continue.
The game not only doesn't continue, but if there's a certain amount of time that passes, the referee has the discretion to give the victory to the opposing.
I think that right there, 100%.
Interesting.
100%.
Yeah, and it'd be interesting, and of course it puts a lot of power in the hands of the referee. But we would have to think, because they don't have a dog in the fight, so to speak, right? Both athletes have a dog in the fight. Both coaches have a dog in the fight. All the parents have a dog in the fight, and that we can expect, at least to an extent, we really can expect them to be impartial, and maybe that's where the solution lies. But of course, there could be some really refs could go really errant on this. Umpires could go really down the wrong road with this and start removing people, 5 at a time every 5 minutes, and it could turn into kind of a havoc situation. But yeah, it's a situation that
I think it's just gotten out of. I think it's gotten out of hand, and I think parents can't police themselves or don't know what good sportsmanship is. They
don't. They certainly in the moment they forget. They lose what it means to be even decent sportsmanship. Carlos, I'm going to go down a different road. As you were talking a couple minutes ago, this thing flashed across my screen. In fact, it's possible you didn't hear about this because this has been kind of in the backdrop of Major League Baseball. But a really harsh penalty has come against the Houston Astros, who were the winner of...
Stealing signs?
Yes. Do you remember this? Did you hear
Absolutely.
Do you remember?
Because it came out right after the World Series, and we had played the Houston Astros, and the question was, were they stealing signs?
That's right. And did you hear the penalty that was just put down? This literally came across my screen. Listen to this. There is a 1-year suspension for general manager Jeff Luhnow, 1-year suspension for manager A.J. Hinch, a $5 million fine, the loss of first and second round draft picks for both this year and next year. Yeah, that's huge, Carlos. First and second round picks. That's how you build your farm system. Yes. And it was so bad that the former assistant GM, Brandon Taubman, is on baseball's ineligible list. In other words, they're probably going to suspend him for a year. In other words, he can't get a job for a year. This is harsh, and that's one of the words that was used on this CBS Sports website. That's a big deal. Wow, all those penalties passed down. So
yeah, and I got to tell you, when the media starts saying it's harsh, it's a good penalty.
Oh yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Like, because they always talk about, well, is that really fair? Well, cheating. I mean, who knows how long they've been doing it? Who knows if they really got caught only once? But yeah, you have to. It's the only way to protect integrity of games to have a harsh penalty. It's consequences, right?
That's right. That's right. And for those folks who are unfamiliar with this story and what they were found guilty of is they were videotaping the signs of the managers in the dugout that they're passing along to the catcher, so they could find out when the catcher flashed a certain number with his fingers, that they could figure out what the pitch was or what the upcoming play was and how they were going to defend against it and so forth. And, of course, that is prohibited, right? You can try to guess, but you can't videotape anything, and this has been passed down. Wow, big penalty. Carlos, let's move on to so you had a miss. I have a hit, actually, and some people would actually probably call this a hit or a miss, actually, but I see it as a hit. And this has to do with the International Olympic Committee. I asked you to read this when we were chatting off air, and it reads like this on this one website. The IOC, the International Olympic Committee, on Thursday, this is last Thursday, became the latest athletic organization to crack down on political protests by its athletes, publishing new rules governing when and how competitors can express political opinions. According to the new rules, athletes are barred from conducting protests or demonstrations on the field of play, in the Olympic Village, during medal ceremonies, or during the opening or closing ceremonies of the game. So that's a lot. And the rule gives several examples of prohibited protests, including messages on armbands or signs, hand gestures with political meaning, kneeling, or refusing to follow ceremony protocol. Athletes will be allowed to express political opinions in media gatherings, press conferences, and mixed zone interviews, and on social media. And the reason I say that this is a hit is perhaps the
Definitely
obvious.
A hit.
Yeah, because too much of this time, effort, and even money has been put toward these people distracting, the athletes distracting, causing a distraction from the athletic event at hand, the ceremony at hand, the press conference at hand, whatever the case is. And the great thing about it, our country especially not only doesn't shun political views, but it welcomes them. But what, most professional organizations, and in particular the Olympic Committee here, is saying is do it at the right time, please. And you know what's interesting about this, Carlos, and this is worth saying, one of the main problems with sunning such rules, in other words, the people that would see this as a total miss, right? You and I see it as a hit. But one of the problems with seeing this as a miss is that whatever we feel passionate about, we sometimes, in fact, in these cases, we often make the mistakes that everyone else feels the same way, right? And that is total errant on the part of many athletes, on the part of many actors and actresses and so forth. Just because the people around you feel that way doesn't mean society as a whole feels that way. And the reason that the International Olympic Committee is doing this, in part, is that they say, we want sport. We want the Olympics. This once every 4-year event, this really special event in the history of our country, especially as it relates to sports. We want it to be a gathering where people come together, and it's not a matter and moment of division. And I thought that was a great thing on their part.
And it absolutely should be. They created the Olympics to begin with. Just think about, the time when we had the Cold War and Russia and the U.S. The fact that we were competing on the same, just like that hockey win that happened, right? There wasn't a lot of politics that was said, but it created an opportunity to connect on a level that has nothing to do with politics.
That's right.
It has to do with team or individual accomplishments, and there can be politics associated with it, but I don't think, it drives me crazy where in the NFL, the whole kneeling, like at the time of the flag,
yeah.
I think it angers a lot of people one way, right, where it's like you want to have your freedom of expression, have it, but just don't do it my sport is my sport. It's like I'm trying to disconnect from the rest of the world, and then that led into at the women's soccer having to do that as well. And I think we talked about that on one of your shows. And it's kind of like I want to watch my game. I don't want to figure out who is politically on what team, and avoid certain aspects of the game because it becomes a platform for your own personal political views.
Absolutely. Well stated, buddy. Hey, listen, I'm going to leave you on this much lighter note. In general, the people in the Washington, D.C. area, are they excited about Ron Rivera coming on as the Redskins coach?
Absolutely.
Very good.
I think they were more excited about Bruce Allen leaving than they were about Ron Rivera. I don't think they could have cared.
Well,
there was a lot of people here who they had the hashtag. What was it? Chris might remember hashtag Fire Bruce Allen.
That's right.
Yeah,
what people were using all the time.
That's right. No, you're receiving. You're getting a good guy because as you know, he's been down here for a long time. He's great with the press. He seems to be really well liked by his players. In any interview I've ever seen him, I just give him a thumbs up. And he's a faithful Catholic. So, buddy, you guys have.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, you guys have. You have nothing but good stuff to look forward to. Listen, Carlos, thank you for joining us. Please.
Pleasure as always, Dr. Acquaviva.
Okay, buddy. We'll talk next time.
See you later.
Okay,
Have a great
man.
show.
Thank you. All right, folks, that was Carlos Herrera, a certified coach up in the for soccer up in the Northern Virginia area. He joins us just about every week to do the hit and miss. If you just joined us, I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. You're listening to Faith in Sport here on Carolina Catholic Radio. Remember to pass along this show, especially if you know a set of athletes, a set of coaches, any administrators, anybody involved in sport, but especially parents. I think this is the show for them. We talk about character, ethics, and morality as it relates to sport, and we get to see how our participation in sport really kind of sends vibes through the community in which we live. So let's do this. We are going to do the weekend headlines, and then we have a special guest coming on that I actually did not mention in the show rundown. Chris, we ready to do the weekend headlines? Let's see if we can get that special music going, buddy.
Yes, we are ready right now for the weekend headlines.
Spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of sport, the thrill of victory, and the agony of defeat. The human drama of athletic competition.
There you go. All right. New music to the back, in the background of our weekend headlines. Let's see how this works. Folks, tonight, college football, the final is LSU versus Clemson tonight. LSU's a slight favorite. That starts at 8 p.m. tonight. And for no other reason, watch the game because you can hear an interview, win or lose, with the great Ed Orgeron, which I think we'll have coming up later on in the show. He's the great animated and often quoted, cited. There's some videos on and so forth about him, and he's the LSU head coach. But anyway, that's tonight at 8 o'clock, that final between LSU and Clemson. NFL playoffs, let's see who won. The Texans, Kansas City Chiefs, the Packers, and the San Francisco 49ers were playoff winners, so we're down to the Final Four. They'll play next weekend, next Sunday. In fact, then we'll have 2 weeks off, and then we'll have the Super Bowl. But the big news around here is Matt Rule is in as the Panthers coach. Listen to this. Chris, this is really impressive. This is what Carolina Panther fans have to look forward to. He goes to Temple. His first year in 2013 as the head coach. His first head coaching job. They're 2-10, right? The next year, they're 6-6. The next year after that, they're 10-4. What a turnaround, right?
Yeah.
2-10, 6-6, 10-4. His last year in 2016, they're 10-3. He heads over to Baylor. Baylor had all kinds of problems with some of their players, and they were put on suspension and so forth. And the coach was relieved of his duties, and so they brought in Matt Rule. Right, the first year at Baylor, they're 1-11. The second year, they're 7-6. This past year, his third year, they're 11-3. What a turnaround!
Yeah.
In both cases, this man knows how to turn around a club. I don't have a dog in the fight. I'm not a Panthers fan. I'm not a Carolina fan. But this guy's going to, he has nothing but good stuff written on his resume. And all the best to him. And I think he's going to not necessarily turn around the Panthers organization. It's not an organization that needs turning around, but I wouldn't be surprised if he succeeds. Look what he's done in the last 2 head coaching jobs.
Right.
NCAA basketball, the top 5. There's I think it's a new order this week. Gonzaga's number 1, Baylor number 2. They switch places with Duke, but Duke is 3rd, Auburn, and then Butler. NC State, your boys continue to do well. They're 11-5. But you know who continues not to do well? Is UNC Chapel Hill.
Mm-hmm.
Chris, listen to this. This is, I don't know, there's how many teams? 14, 16, something like that in the ACC?
Yeah, I think so.
At the top, of course, is Duke. They're 5-0. They're 15-1, right? NC State's near the bottom because they're 2-3 in the division ACC, but they're 11-5 overall. But get this. Nobody would have guessed this. Almost halfway through the year. In fact, we are virtually halfway through the year. The team in last place, Chris, is UNC Chapel Hill. They're 1-4 in the league, and they're 8-8 overall. They have the worst record in both cases. Who would have guessed this just a couple weeks ago? Wow. So, I know there's some UNC fans out there listening in, and they're like, I'm not sure I'm listening to the show again. He just keeps rubbing in how bad we are. But it's just news, so I'm passing I'm just passing that along to our listeners.
Yeah, the news is the news, good or bad.
That's right, good or bad, brother. That's what we do. In the NBA, I think as much as anything, Golden State Warriors, despite them being, second from last in all of the West in the NBA, they're considering obtaining Ben Simmons from the 76ers for D'Angelo Russell. It's going to be a trade for really good, so we'll see if that happens. But Golden State's looking for a shot in the arm, so they want to get out of that basement. All right, that's what we have for weekend headlines. Do we have our guest on the line?
Yes, we do.
Oh, this is fantastic. Folks, in the beginning of the show, when I did our rundown, I mentioned that we're going to have Carlos Herrera to do our hit and miss, and I mentioned after the break we're going to have Frank Allocco. He's a director of Excel basketball camps and former Notre Dame football player and basketball player. But I had not mentioned that sandwiched in between those two guys, we're going to have another guest, and I want to bring on Hank Chardos. And before I bring him on and hear from him a little bit, I'm going to put this in context because this actually doesn't have anything to do with faith or the Faith in Sport show and the normal kind of conversations we have. But a couple years ago, I got an invite to join the men's group, which meets every Saturday morning at 6:30, and we usually either have Mass or we pray the Rosary. And then we have Bible study time, right? Mm-hmm. And then we talk about a certain topic and we have a discussion. And that whole time that I belong to this men's group, Hank has been the leader of this group. And then through conversations with him and conversations he's had with the men's group, he's mentioned that some of the work that he does, and it's called the Birthright of Columbia. And Hank is the executive director and co-founder. And I just wanted to bring him on the show and just let our listeners know one of the ways in which a local parishioner, a guy in our community, is doing great things in the world of pregnancy and help fighting against abortion. So, Hank Chardos, welcome to the show.
Hi, John. Nice to talk with you.
Yeah, this is great that you're here, buddy. And again, for anybody just joining us, our conversation with Hank is not going to go down the road of faith and sport, but it's just what we'd like to think here on Faith and Sport is that we take a grander view and a more general view of our Catholic faith and our Christian faith. And I think Hank is doing such good work with the Birthright of Columbia that I wanted to bring him on for a couple minutes and just let our listeners know one of the great organizations out there. Now, a little bit of background, Hank, what is it that you guys do at Birthright of Columbia?
Birthright's a pro-life emergency pregnancy service, John. We provide assistance and aid to women who either suspect that they're pregnant or know that they're pregnant, when oftentimes there isn't a birth father. So we are absolutely opposed to abortion, but we continue that statement by saying, how can we help you?
Very good. And you guys you and your wife, Sally, co-founded this how many years ago?
40 years ago, John.
God bless you, folks. Okay, so I'm going to read this. This is directly from a pamphlet that you provided for the guys this past Saturday. In over 40 years, or almost 40 years in Columbia, Birthright has assisted thousands of pregnant girls and women in their struggle to manage their unexpected and problem pregnancies. In a typical year, Birthright of Columbia has assisted with over 1,400 calls and office visits, helped 516 clients, counseled 36 abortion-minded clients, trained 15 office volunteers, and supported 81 fathers of the babies who accompanied the pregnant mom. You're doing some good stuff there, brother. And what was it? You and Sally must have sat down, prayed on this. This probably going through your head. But take us back 40 years ago. Was there something that happened within your family, or just something that happened within your heart that propelled you and Sally to go, honey, let's start this organization?
It came through our front door, John. At the time, our oldest daughter was born. I can still remember holding her in my arms.
Sure.
A family member came to Sally and I and shared that she's in high school and that she couldn't tell her parents and didn't know what to do. And I can only remember about maybe 2 months later, we found out that she had an abortion.
Wow.
And that was it. It came through our front door.
Yep.
And so then we said, wow, this is as real as could be. And so let's see what we can do. And so at the time, we looked into organizations that solely did this. And Birthright is, in Colombia, one of 230 chapters that exist that solely wants to convey that message of help and hope.
You're certainly doing that, buddy. And let's end on this note. If somebody wants to give hope and support to the babies and the moms of Birthright, what can they do?
At the top of the list, John, I appreciate the question, is prayer. Praying for the clients, praying for the office volunteers. They could donate maternity clothes, maybe healthcare items, baby items. Having access and looking at the website, birthrightofcolumbia.org, gives them a good appreciation of what we're doing. But one thing I did want to mention, John, I have given literally hundreds and hundreds of talks over those 40 years. And here's one of the predominant questions. Are you Catholic? And you know my response is, John?
Let's hear it.
You could tell, can't you? You could tell.
That's
and
right.
That's why it's so important that Catholics, in particular, are the ones who have an unequivocal position on this, because there's a life there.
Very good. And why don't you go ahead and give an email address or a website address so people, if they want to help support it, especially financially, it's a 501c charitable organization. And give us some information, Hank, on how these folks can get a hold of you or just read more about what you do at Birthright of Columbia.
I sure can, John. Birthrightofcolumbia.org is the website, and birthrightofcolumbia.org, that gives them access to an awful lot of perspective and understanding that we simply want to help. And I greatly appreciate, John, this opportunity to have your listeners become aware, because prayer, when you asked about what can be done, that's at the top of the list, John.
Well, buddy, you've been doing it for 40 years. The least I can do is give you 5 minutes.
Thank you, John.
Hank Chardos, Birthright of Columbia co-founder and executive director, and I'm going to ask our listening audience to pray for you in your continued service to the church and this important part of the church's outreach. Thank you, Hank.
Thank you, John. God bless you.
God bless you. Well, there you have it, folks. That was Hank Chardos, and he gave some information on how you can help support. First thing he asked for was prayer, and I'm going to give that the web address again. It's Birthright of Columbia, all one word, birthrightofcolumbia.org. So check out that website. You can go to see more of what they do, and then if you're so inspired after checking out their website, please consider giving, because nothing is more honorable in our society and what the work of Hank and his wife Sally. So thanks for them. Thanks for everybody that's a listener that supports or does this similar, very important work. All right, Chris, we have Frank Allocco. This guy is fantastic. He's one of the only people that's going to be on the phone with me today that has 10 times more energy than me and you combined. Anyway, he's going to be joining us after the break. He is the director of Excel basketball camps. He's the former University of Notre Dame football and basketball player. How many people can say that? They played Division I and played two different sports. Anyway, he is Frank Allocco. He's going to join us right after the break. Take it from here, Chris.
And before we go to break, we want to remind you that you've got plenty of opportunities to hear an encore presentation of this show throughout the week. Mondays from 10 to 11, Tuesdays 8 to 9, Wednesdays 11 to 12, Thursdays 10 to 11, and Fridays 11 to 12. And Saturdays 4 to 5, and Sundays 2 to 3. So you've got plenty of opportunities to catch up on Faith and Sport. If you happen to miss part of the show or you missed the show entirely, you've got a chance to hear an encore presentation of the show and catch up on one of those encore presentation times on Carolina Catholic Radio here on Carolina Catholic Radio Charlotte, AM 1270. Also on carolinacatholicradio.org. We're streaming at carolinacatholicradio.org and also on the Carolina Catholic Radio app. We've got plenty of opportunities not to miss Faith in Sport, and we've got more Faith in Sport live coming up right after the break.
AM 1270 Catholic Radio Charlotte, now with 3 ways to listen: on air, online, and our new mobile app.
Hi, folks. Dr. John Acquaviva here, host of one of the local shows on Carolina Catholic Radio called Faith in Sport. And I invite you to check out my new book, Improving Body Image Through Catholic Teaching. This book is meant to address one of our culture's silent soul killers, feeling terrible about how we look. But remember, God has something to say about this as well. That's Improving Body Image Through Catholic Teaching, available at tanbooks.com or Amazon. And be sure to join me each Monday at 2 p.m. for Faith in Sport.
Do you wish to have a closer union with our Lord Jesus Christ? Would you like to learn how to be the hands and feet of Christ? Would you enjoy living the famous prayer attributed to St. Francis that begins with, "Lord, make me a channel of your peace," and truly learn what it means? St. Francis also had a famous expression that when all else fails, use words. If these words touch your heart, then you may be interested in inquiring to become a Third Order Franciscan. The St. Maximilian Kolbe Fraternity of Third Order Franciscans meets at St. Thomas Aquinas on the first Saturday morning of each month at 11 a.m. after the 10 a.m. Mass. At our gathering, we pray together, we study together, we eat together, and we encourage one another. Together we learn more deeply the meaning of love. If you would like more information on becoming a Third Order Franciscan, please call Tom O'Loughlin at 704-604-7739. That's 704-604-7739. We'll pray that you take the next step and come join us and be a part of our next gathering. Remember the words, us is the last 2 letters of Jesus. Thank you.
AM 1270 Catholic Radio Charlotte and the Carolina Catholic Radio Network have big plans for you in the months ahead. We're developing 6 media platforms highlighted by our new Carolina Catholic mobile app. Our goal is to provide timely communication of what you need to know and what interests you most. All content designed to support and encourage you and your family on your journey of faith and daily life. This fall, we plan to appear all across the diocese, from the Eucharistic Congress to parish, school, and pro-life events, and highlighted by our first annual Carolina Catholic Music Night at the Abbey, October 26. On the local program side, Carolina Catholic Radio provides the latest news from the Catholic News Herald and is developing programs with our clergy, parish ministries, Catholic schools and homeschools, Catholic moms, men's groups, and the Knights of Columbus. Earlier this year, we debuted our first local programs, Faith in Sport and Keeping Catholic Real. Carolina Catholic Radio is a 100% listener-supported 501c3 nonprofit corporation. Your generosity will keep us on the air. Please consider making a tax-deductible donation or monthly tithe today. Thank you, and may God bless you.
And we are back with more Faith in Sport live on the Carolina Catholic Radio Network, AM 1270. We're also streaming live at carolinacatholicradio.org and on the Carolina Catholic Radio app. And now let's kick it back to your host for Faith in Sport, Dr. John Acquaviva.
Would that be me, sir?
Yes, that would be you.
Now, is it Acquaviva or Aquaviva?
Either way you choose to pronounce it. Acquaviva, Aquaviva.
Depends what Monday it is. Folks, welcome back to the second half of our show. John Acquaviva. I'm a exercise physiologist at Wingate University, but every Monday afternoon I come and sit behind this microphone. Chris goes over there and sits behind that microphone, and we scream at you for about, along with Ed Orgeron, for about 60 minutes. So we got Ed Orgeron coming up later.
That's right.
In the form of videotape or audio tape. He is the coach of LSU, and one of the reasons we're promoting that whole thing is because LSU and Clemson played tonight in the national championship game for the college world championship. I think I stumbled over a lot of words there. I think everybody got the idea. So listen, we're going to bring on here in a minute Frank Allocco. He's the executive director of Excel basketball camps and former University of Notre Dame football and basketball player. He's a faithful guy. He's an energetic guy. As soon as I talked to him, literally, we were talking last week for the first time. We had emailed each other, and then we talked for the first time last week in preparation for this And I think I was elevated in my seat. He had so much energy. I was like, I got to have this man on the show. So he joins us in a minute. After Frank's segment, we're going to do the quick Q&A with Dr. A, where Chris shoots a couple questions at me, in which I may or may not actually know the answer to. And then we'll do our stat of the week, and I'm going to throw some crazy stat out, and it may or may not surprise you. But let's bring Frank Allocco on. Frank, are you there to have a conversation with us?
I am, John. Good talking to you.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us today. Now, talk to us first about what is XL Basketball Camp, and why did you start it years ago?
Well, John, I got involved with the camps, but basically, I grew up in New Jersey, and one of my favorite coaches of all time was a guy named Don Carpenter.
Okay.
And Coach Carpenter was really instrumental in me going to Notre Dame. He sort of outreached for me. I got hurt my senior year, did not play my senior year.
Wow.
And at that time, Notre Dame did not recruit any players who hadn't played their senior year, but Coach Carpenter wouldn't give up. He kept calling Coach Parsegian and saying I needed to be a part of that program, and he was very instrumental in me going there. And when I left Notre Dame, I came back to my hometown of New Providence, and when I left, I told him I was moving to California. He said, I want you to make me a promise that you'll always remain a part of this community somehow.
Got it.
And I did make that promise to him. And ironically, a couple of years later, I was traveling on a business trip to Hawaii, and I picked up the San Francisco Chronicle, and there was an article about Stu Aberdeen. There was a little brief paragraph that Coach Aberdeen had passed away. He was the head coach at Marshall University. He was only 49 years old. And when I read that obituary, it really bothered me because Coach changed my life. Yeah. I went to a basketball camp in Pennsylvania, and I met Coach. He gave this incredible speech and challenged people with a concept he called the winning edge. And that was if you are a person of faith, if you act right, you follow the Christian principles, you don't drink, don't do drugs, you live a different life, that you gain an edge on other people. And it really was something that I believed in and adopted. And so I tried to live my life like that, and he really was hugely instrumental in that. So when he passed away, it hit me really hard. And that night I went to bed, and I actually dreamt XL Basketball Camp right down to the logo. And I called my brother Jerry, who was a great high school coach in Jersey, said, I'm going to start a basketball camp, and with the whole intention of keeping Coach Aberdeen's message alive. So went back and did that the first year. We had 37 kids in New Providence, and after that we were full, and we've been full for this will be our 40th summer of camp. And I do believe it's successful because not only do we teach basketball, we teach a lifestyle of being a great teammate and being of service to your friends.
And on the website, for instance, one of your goals is you want to develop the complete player through these camps. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think a complete player is one that really goes beyond the skills of basketball. I did some clinics for Nike in Beijing, China, and I was asked by a reporter, what's the most important skill in basketball? And I said it was love. And she said, no, I mean basketball skill. And I said, and I mean love. And the third time, I think she got the idea I wasn't coming off that. And I really do believe that, that's a huge part of the game is playing for your friends. That you don't let people down, and you accept responsibility, and you live your life with love. And it starts from every little thing. So things that we teach at camp and trying to build a complete player is first thing you do in the morning is make your bed. Yep. And that's been topical now for a while, but we were saying that years ago. But not only do we say make your bed, we say make your bed perfectly, right? Correct. And so you start your day off by doing something that you do at a really high level. Secondly, you're letting your mom and dad know that I got you covered. I'm willing to do my part. And on Wednesday, we teach the help side stance. And to give you an idea about when we talk about the complete player, we don't call it the help side stance. We call it the friendship stance. Because in the friendship stance, you're saying, in the help side stance, you're saying, I've got your help, I've got your help. In the friendship stance, you're saying, I've got your back, I've got your back. So we've sort of implemented the same philosophy that you can practice your defense at home by helping mom bring the groceries in, by helping with your little brother and sister, by doing the right thing around the home. So with that being said, we go well beyond the lessons of basketball to teach kids to be productive people in their families and their communities, and to keep a high standard of excellence, whether it's on the basketball court or whether it's in your community.
Well stated. Folks, I'm Dr. John Acquaviva. You're listening to Carolina Catholic Radio. The show is Faith in Sport. We're talking to Coach Frank Allocco. He's the director of XL Basketball Camps. And amazingly, Frank is one of the few people in probably in the last 50 years to have played more than one sport at the Division I level. And Frank, you may be thinking as I'm saying that it's an overstatement, but what percentage of athletes do you think at the Division I level have played more than one sport at that particular university or college?
Not too many. I can only think of 3 or 4 that have done that at Notre Dame, and particularly football and basketball.
Yeah, exactly.
Some might do football and baseball because of the the time frame, but to do both back to back was real difficult. I know my sophomore year, I was back on campus in mid-August preparing for the season. We go on and go to the Orange Bowl, and then the Orange Bowl ends. I went back to New Jersey for 2 days to see Mom and Dad, and then I'm back at Notre Dame playing basketball. And then we went to the NIT. That was Digger's second year, Digger Phelps' second year. We went to the NIT and came back from the NIT on April 1st, and now football's starting, So I think I had like 5 days off that entire year. So it was very difficult to do that, but it was something I really treasured and was happy that I could come off the football field and give Coach Phelps some assistance as he was building his program.
That's awesome. I'm surprised you had actually 2 days off. I figured you'd have about 2 hours off, and then you had to switch. Hey, we did not talk about this, but when you mentioned Digger Phelps, this is the story that pops up. You having played for him, and of course a lot of other people that know him much better than I do or actually know him, but this is my vivid memory of him. It was Ash Wednesday about 5 or 6 years ago, maybe 7 or 8, and there was a basketball show on ESPN. And remember, this is Ash Wednesday, right? And it's maybe in the evening around 5 or 6 o'clock, and they have a couple, NCAA games on the docket that night. And sitting in the studio, at the studio table, is the host of the show, who I can't remember, and it was Dick Vitale and Digger Phelps. And both Digger Phelps and Dick Vitale clearly had the ashes on their head. And I said, as soon as I saw that, I said to my wife, that takes courage. That's a wonderful sight. But that probably doesn't surprise you, what you know of Digger Phelps.
No, I was really blessed, John, to play for 2 incredible coaches, in Digger Phelps and Coach Ara Parsegian. And they were quite different personalities, but I think they both really represented Notre Dame and really believed that, competing wasn't just about, beating people. It was doing it a certain way, and that was representing the university, representing Our Lady, and really being men of faith and Notre Dame men. And it was something that all of us from that generation really take quite seriously. I often say that, the team that I was on in football in 1973, that was not a great, talented team, but it was one of the greatest teams I've ever seen or been a part of, because the love on that team was so overwhelming and overpowering. And to this day, we're talking 27, 46 years after the fact.
Yeah.
They're still close. We go to reunions, and I had the thrill of a lifetime to speak at one of our reunions. Dave Casper was the MC, and they asked everyone on our team, they had different grade levels. They took a representative from each class to come up, and talk about what that year meant to them. And so, we had NFL players and freshman year, sophomore year. They get to the junior class and they call my name up. Mm-hmm. And I went up and said, the fact that you would call me up to address this group speaks volumes about who we were, because I was a backup quarterback and a holder, but yet I had a pivotal role on that team.
Right.
My role was to keep the guys loose. I was funny in the locker room. I was entertaining. I would motivate guys. I would get the prep team to really perform. And I always felt valued, and I think that was what the coaches really taught there, that everyone had a value, and we believed in that value. There was never a thought then of transferring and going to start at a different school. It was, I'm going to be the best teammate I can be at this incredible institution that I get to be a part of. And I was there at a time, think about this, I remember at that dinner I said, I'm sitting here addressing Father Hesburgh, who to me is one of the great Catholics of all time, one of the greatest men to ever live. I really do feel that way about him, and Ara Parsegian and guys like Moose Krause, that were really dynamic leaders who really did set the tone for the generations that would follow them.
It's outstanding. Frank, go back a couple minutes in this conversation. You mentioned that you did not play your senior year. Now, when you said that, were you injured in football and basketball your entire senior year?
Yeah, so my first year, I was an All-American quarterback. Going into my senior year, we had, a ton of starters back from a good team the year before. We were one of the best teams in the country, quite frankly. We had a scrimmage against Union. I think we beat them like 40-10, and then we beat Butler, another great team. We dominated these teams in scrimmages. And in the first game of my senior year, I went back to pass. There was 8,000 people at the game. I go back to pass, and I called the draw play. And my little brother, who was one of the newcomers, a sophomore, who would follow me at Notre Dame, he went about 70 yards on a draw play. And I remember skipping down the field thinking, this is going to be the greatest year of my life. This is going to be a magical season. Everything is lining up, right? And I threw a touchdown pass. I was 2 for 2 after 2 minutes into the game with 1 touchdown pass. The second time we got the ball, I was rolling out. I was running the option. I faked the pitch, and I turned my shoulder, and here I come running at a defensive back, all 165 pounds of me. I let my shoulder down, and the collision, and I went to the ground, and my collarbone snapped in half.
Jeez.
And I remember lying on the ground, just thinking my dream of going to Notre Dame is over. And I went to the sideline. I was trying to put it back in place. I wanted to play, and when my coach came over and looked at me, started crying, Mr. Carpenter, and I realized that I wasn't going to be playing anymore. And I went back to went to the emergency room with my father and my older brother Jerry, and I was devastated. I kept crying at Notre Dame. My dream was over. That was been my target since I was 10 years old. I wanted to be the quarterback at Notre Dame. And my brother and Jerry were really telling me that this is God's message to you.
Huh.
And you're going to laugh. It's God's message for you to play basketball. I was really highly recruited more recruited for basketball than I was for football.
Sure.
And they calmed me down, and I just decided, I'm going to get ready for basketball season, and that's the message. And I remember getting in the car and driving home and turning on the radio, and there was the Notre Dame fight song, and I started crying all over again, knowing that my dream was over. And I went back that night, and I remember being visited by all my teammates. And this nun, Sister John Bertram, who was my father's best friend, was our parish priest, Father Peter Daugherty, and his sister was a nun, and she came to see me, and she gave me a poem which said, "Each sorrow is a shadow sweet that tells how near Christ's nailed feet are walking by thy side." And I put that over my bed, and I have really lived that my entire life. I've taught that to kids, that in moments of adversity, we do get the opportunity to feel a little bit of the pain that Christ felt.
Absolutely.
And it's motivated me my entire life. And my high school coach came to me that night and said, "You're going to Notre Dame." And to be honest with you, John, I had said, "I'm not playing football anymore. This is crazy. One hit and your dreams could be over."
Yeah.
I was ready for a great basketball season. I went on my senior year. I averaged 29 points a game, and Duke was recruiting me, and Princeton was recruiting me. I had many, many offers in basketball. And my high school coach just wouldn't give up. He just kept writing them letters. And then Coach Parsegian actually came to watch me playing basketball. And it was for my efforts on the basketball court that they were intrigued by me.
That's
and they invited me out for an official visit in the spring. And to be honest with you, John, I was like, I don't want to play football. And yet I didn't want to disappoint my family. And I went out on my official visit, started walking around the campus, and I went out to the football field. And Coach Parsegian says, "Frank, I want you to kneel next to me, or stand next to me, and imagine you're in the pocket at Notre Dame." And he asked me to kneel in the huddle. And I knelt in the huddle next to their quarterback. It was a muddy day. And I remember that ball was snapped, and I saw all these monsters going at me, and I had a panic attack, like, I can't play here. And I made an excuse and said I wanted to go back to my room. I went back to the hotel room, and I cried, and I actually prayed. I said, "God, you have to help me. I don't want to play football, but I don't want to disappoint my family and friends." That night I went to a party, didn't have a good time, left early, started wandering around the campus, started to snow. And I got lost by the twin lakes at Notre Dame, and all of a sudden I saw these lights in the distance. And it was the grotto, all the candles flickering from the grotto. And I walked up that long path, and I knelt down, and I felt a little bit like Jesus in the Garden of
Gethsemane,
praying, you're saying that, is there another way that this can happen? And I remember praying that God, give me an answer. You've got to get me out of this, right? And I went to bed that night, and the next morning I woke up, visited Coach Parsegian, and he said, you remind us of Joe Theismann. You're from New Jersey, the way you run, the way you throw, and we're offering you a full scholarship. Go home and talk to Mom and Dad. And I said, I don't have to talk to anybody. I'm going to sign. And this transformation happened to me, and I really do believe it was God's will, pointing me in the right direction. And quite frankly, John, I went there and didn't start, but I wouldn't have traded 1 second for the lessons I learned from the amazing mentors and the faith that I learned through my experiences at Notre Dame.
Awesome. Buddy, you got a great story to tell. God bless you for all you've done, and thank you for appearing here on the program. And before you go, Frank, tell us if folks are interested in sending their son or daughter to these basketball camps, how can they get in touch with you and these camps?
Well, in California, it's excelinbasketball.com, and in New Jersey, it's excelinbasketballnj.com.
There you go.
So, yeah, we'd love to have them there. We'd love to continue doing the work and trying to. Our theme is change the world one player at a time.
You got a lot to say, and you say it well. Let's do this. Come the spring, just before these camps start, I want to have you back on the show, and we can have another conversation. How's that?
Oh, that'd be great, John. I'd love to share more stories with you.
Frank Allocco, I will ask our listening audience to pray for you and your continued service through the church, or to the church, through these basketball camps. You have a good day, buddy, and thanks again for appearing on Faith in Sport.
Thanks, John. God bless you.
God bless you, buddy. All right, folks, there you have it. Frank Allocco. What a story, man. What a great story.
Yeah.
Great athlete. Boy, that is something that a lot of people are going to live through is somebody else's accomplishments there, but not many people have the ability to play at a high level in high school and college, and he had the ability to play both sports at a great university, so good stuff. So listen, we got to do our stat of the week, but maybe we can save that for next time. Let's do this. Let's still do a quick Q&A. Why don't you give me questions 2 and 3, and then we'll balance them pretty quickly, and then we can wrap up the show.
All right. The first one is Tim Tebow has been invited to New York Mets spring training camp. Is he a legit prospect for Major League Baseball?
Ready for this, Chris?
Yeah.
No, he's not. In fact, this is pretty amazing. A lot of people probably forgot this. He's been in the minor leagues for 3 years after playing, right? He was a great Heisman Trophy winner at University of Florida as a quarterback, and then he played in the NFL for a couple years for a couple teams, and then he's played 3 years at minor league baseball, having not played since his high school years. And he has been invited to the spring training camp, which starts next month. It's a huge compliment, but I think it's frankly all about money, and here's why I say that. The day after he signed a contract to go to minor league baseball 3 years ago, New York Mets reported that sales in the next couple days went up by $1 million in T-shirts, in jerseys, and so forth. So needless to say, he's famous, he's popular, a lot of people like him. But here's what I'll say. If he won't make the team this year. He batted less than 200 last year. In fact, I think he batted 163 in AAA. But if he bats 250 in AAA this year, by September, he's going to be up in the Major League Club because it's a great way to bring notoriety to the sport, and I think it'll pay a lot of bills to have him on that roster.
Right.
All right, buddy, what's the last question?
Finally, who do you like in tonight's college football final?
Clemson. The favorite is LSU, but I'm going to say Clemson because of Trevor Lawrence. They haven't lost in 2 years. They were the national champions last year, and I like it that they're the underdogs. By the way, what does Ed Orgeron say about the whole thing about playing tonight?
Well, first of all, college football is great, especially in the South here. Everybody loves their football team. I understand their fans, how much they love their football team. We have a great fan base here. It was just time for us to win. We had the better football team. We had to go get it done, and we did. Well, first of all, college football is...
Folks, that is Ed Orgeron. That is not somebody imitating Ed Orgeron. That is the head coach of... I'm not the first one to jump on this wagon of... just admiring the way he talks, and I think he's great. I think everybody's fallen in love with this guy through the way he talks and just the way he handles himself. He's just a real guy. He's probably a real lover of good beer, and he's probably a real lover of like good Cajun food like jambalaya. Just the way he comes off, and he's one heck of a football coach, and he might very well be the coach of the new national championship, LSU Tigers, but my prediction is the Clemson Tigers. It's the Tiger Bowl, everybody.
And you know what else? He's a fan of Faith and Sport.
There you go.
Those are my boys. We stick together. Hey, those are my boys. We stick together. Hey, those are my boys. We stick together.
Very good. I knew he was a fan. Folks, thank you for listening today. I want to thank our 3 guests. This is the first time we've ever done this. Carlos Herrera joined us for the hit and miss. Hank Chardos joined us to talk about a organization he founded. He's the executive director and co-founder of Birthright of Columbia. And a special thanks to our guest that just got off the phone with, Frank Allocco, who heads Excel Basketball Camp. Over to you, Chris. Please join us next time here on Faith and Sport.
That's right, and we want to thank you for tuning in for Faith and Sport on this Monday afternoon from 2 to 3 on Carolina Catholic Radio, AM 1270, and also streaming live at carolinacatholicradio.org and on the Carolina Catholic Radio app. And make sure that you catch us on one of our encore presentation times throughout the week on Carolina Catholic Radio if you missed any of the show today. And we'll meet you back here live at the studio next Monday afternoon from 2 to 3 for more Faith and Sport live here on Carolina Catholic Radio, AM 1270, CarolinaCatholicRadio.org, and on the Carolina Catholic Radio app. Thanks for tuning in for Faith and Sport, everybody.
Hello, God's beloved. I'm Annabelle Mosley, author, professor of theology, and host of Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. I invite you to listen in and find inspiration along this sacred journey we're traveling together to make our lives a masterpiece and, with God's grace, become saints. Join me, Annabelle Mosley, for Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. God bless you. Remember, you're never alone. God is always with you.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.